Good afternoon. We were talking about resistance, and I thought of an example of group resistance, which could be a large group of slaves in the 1800s before they were freed. If they would want to resist an unjust master, they could all get together and refuse to work. And in the process, a few of them may be whipped or killed. Somebody might even get killed. And they would have to plan it out way ahead of time. They would have to plan it out very well because the government would be involved and the military would be involved. They would have to know what they were doing. But that is an example. Okay, if we succeed at not accepting a reward, that also, a reward is like a reverse punishment. Resisting a reward, it could have a big effect because it's like dropping a link from a chain. So an example might be an owner of a private home in a redevelopment area who refuses to sell his home when the scheme is not for the common good. So his refusal is on principle. It's not because of a whim, because he feels like refusing and giving everybody a hard time. No, that is not a legitimate reason. It would be because the overall redevelopment is not for the common good in some way. Maybe there's a whole group of people who are being pushed into selling their homes. Maybe he's the first one and he refuses. Now, it would help him if he had the whole group on his side for a good resistance. If he's the only one that refuses, they could raise his taxes, or they could condemn his building. And the government already has these ways of taking care of people who refuse. But if he had a whole group of people and they all knew that this is not a good idea, somehow they were all convinced, they would all have to study it. It's all very complex. They'd have to study all the details and really be convinced that this is not for the common good. Then they could try to resist all of them together, and they might get farther than if just one tried, but it still would be a difficult thing to try to do. Resistance has never been easy if it's a true resistance for the common good, not just because you don't like authority, I want to resist now and not do what you tell me. Such as children in a classroom might do. Oh no, I'll do the opposite than what the teacher says. No, that's not the idea of a real resistance. A real resistance is something that has been thought through and understood as not being for the good. Somehow the authority got it wrong and they're doing something against the common good. Okay. In these cases, there could be abuse against people who try to resist of different kinds. And the person resisting has to also know this ahead of time, what he's in for. These are controversial questions, and so the necessary study and preparation first. If a group of home owners is unified, they can more easily communicate about it with each other, which could help to get more people to resist. I have been looking at problems of today, but we can look into the past for rewards and punishments of our own lives, individual lives, and see about rewards and punishments and try to analyze our present problems in terms of those rewards and punishments. Excuse the interruption. I don't know how to make my phone stop ringing.
Hello. Please leave a message after the...
I'm sorry, I'm on the YouTube right now. I'll call you back. I didn't know how to handle that. As you can see, I'm not computer literate. Okay, I've been looking at it today, but we can look into our own past and try to cure problems that we have today due to our own past history of rewards and punishments. And we can use this theory of rewards and punishments in several different ways. But the two that occur to me, one is the present. How do we deal with situations of rewards and punishments today, and also how do we take care of our past problems which we have today due to our past treatment where we were rewarded or punished or where that came into play. Okay, now if we talk about systems have needs, and inputs are needed to take care of those needs. Outputs are what we give back off. For example, the lungs, which take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. So input is oxygen, take the oxygen, give off the output, what you don't need. Something else is going to need the carbon dioxide in a natural system. A natural system is several systems together making a bigger system. And my system is one system, and other people have other systems, or things have other systems, and they become bigger and bigger. And the more complex system would take precedence if there's a conflict, a simple conflict, unless, now I'm going to give you an example here. In an organic system, these exchanges contribute to the common good of more and more complex systems. But when the unhealthy rewards and punishments syndrome enters a system, destructive effects start taking place. It's hard to describe this phenomenon. No widespread terminology has been accepted yet. So I use the best words I can find to describe it. Sometimes a word doesn't work, and it loses its meaning right in the middle of a sentence. A rewards and punishment syndrome can enter into almost any context. Some are political and or economic, but each context can be a far cry from the next. An example of an international political one is from the past. If the United States wanted a pipeline run through Afghanistan and Afghan leaders refused, the United States might punish them with a war. The harm done by this is obvious. That would be part of the punishment syndrome, the war. An example of a national reward or punishment syndrome is in regard to the government's promotion of a product, namely computers, by the rewards and encouragement, by special subsidization, by subsidization of education about its use, and special grants for its development. Many other ways. These government rewards would be given locally, statewide, and federally. This would cause them to take over quickly without people noticing the many, ultimately perhaps overwhelming negative effects, such as waste of all other products which are no longer used because computers came in. That's a big waste. And of systems that are no longer used because of computers. That's a tremendous waste that has happened already. Also, the hacking That wasn't thought of when they first brought in computers and wasn't mentioned. The privacy invasion, the identity theft, elections tampering, that's a new one. And who knows what more might come in the future, with banks maybe falling when they get hacked too much. They're already being hacked all the time, but someday it might be too much. Do we think about that when we reward the use of computers? They did that city, county, I think, state, federal, giving rewards for computers, for the use of computers. They pushed it in other words. That's an example of pushing in something through rewards, so that computers today dominate the scene. Well, that's all for today. I hope to explain that one point that I didn't get to.